1 year after World War II ended, the Japanese government lifted the ban on horse racing, but with so many citizens desperate to rebuild their lives, the horse racing industry struggled in a post-war era. However, in 1950, one horse emerged from the rubble and demanded the people's attention with his absolute running ability. The dominance of this horse became so legendary that even 75 years later, not a single Japanese horse has replicated his record. To this day, many fans still believe the strongest horse in Japanese history was Tokino Minoru. Born on May 2nd, 1948 at Motokiri Farm in Mitsubishi Town, Tokino Minoru was sired by Theft, a British racehorse well known for his strength in short distances, who was Japan's leading sire between 1947 through 1951. Tokino Minoru's dam was Dai-Ni Tyrant's Queen, an unraced mare whose grand dam sire was the Tetrak, an undefeated 7-win Irish stallion during 1913, and considered as the strongest 2-year-old of the 20th century, but we'll get back to him later. Additionally, Tokino Minoru is one of the few racehorses with a direct stallion bloodline from Byerly Turk, one of the 3 foundational sires for the modern thoroughbred horse, and the model for one of the 3 goddesses in Umamusume. Like how Ogiri Cap was given the full name Hatsuratsu, horse producer Masahiko Kasagi named Tokino Minoru as Perfect, but that was far from the truth. Although he had a big, powerful-looking body, he was born with a weak right foreleg and not considered a good-looking horse due to his poor conformation. He was tall with long legs, but also thin, which was common among Theft's foals. Funnily, racing critic Keijiro Okawa described him as a horse like a cucumber with chopsticks in it. Sadly, Kasagi could not find anyone to buy his horse. Perfect's older siblings were unremarkable racers, and Theft's bloodline was not in high demand at the time. After Saint Light became Japan's first Triple Crown horse in 1941, many owners were eager to attain the next Triple Crown champion. Unfortunately for Perfect, that meant they believed horses with sprinter-type pedigrees were unsuitable for their goals. Coincidentally, the only person who eventually showed interest in Perfect was Waichiro Tanaka, Saint Light's trainer. Impressed from the horse's strong hind quarters, Tanaka firmly believed, "This is no ordinary horse," and recommended Perfect to Dai-A Film Company's president, Masaichi Nagata. Initially reluctant to purchase Perfect, Nagata folded to peer pressure and bought the horse for 1 million yen, which was incredibly high at the time, and was the same amount of prize money the Japanese Derby paid out to first place. But despite spending so much money on Perfect, Nagata showed no interest in his new horse. Commenting on Perfect's appearance, Nagata said, "To an amateur's eye, he didn't look impressive. I didn't think he'd be much of a runner, though he did look somewhat fierce." Without even giving his colt a new name, Nagata left Perfect in Tanaka's care. After relocating to his stable in the spring of 1950, Tanaka discovered his new trainee had a huge handicap. Perfect suffered from chronic knee pain due to his weak right leg, and frequently developed hoof cracks. The pain affected him so much that Mitsumasa Iwashita, Perfect's sole jockey, claimed the horse always ran on 3 legs to avoid putting pressure on his bad knee. Additionally, Yoshio Nohira, an apprentice jockey at the stable, said Perfect was never allowed to do a full workout because of the hoof cracks and never trained beyond 70% effort. Nevertheless, the team carefully continued preparing for his debut. In July of that year, Perfect was relocated to Hakodate for his first race. However, he threw a tantrum 2 days beforehand during starting practice, and racing officials denied his participation. Thankfully, Tomoji Kuribayashi intervened and used his status to grant Perfect's entry. Kuribayashi was the owner of Kurifuji, the first mare in history to win the Japanese Derby, which was not accomplished again until 64 years later by Vodka in 2007. Kurifuji also holds the highest undefeated win streak since debut in Japanese history at 11 wins. Fun fact, Kuribayashi's son, Hideo, was Rice Shower's owner. Although Perfect was allowed to enter, he still harbored a mean temper. Just a few moments before the race began, Perfect threw Iwashita off his back. After Iwashita got back on and was given the starting signal, Perfect dashed forward and overtook the only two other horses. He finished the 800-meter turf track with an 8-length lead and set a new course record at 48.1 seconds. Spectators were stunned. A Japanese record in a debut race? What is this horse? Later that evening, Tanaka called the owner, informing him of his horse's impeccable performance. Funnily, Nagata forgot all about Perfect. What horse is that? After recalling the colt he paid a large sum for, Nagata was filled with delight and quickly visited Tanaka's stable. Thanks to you, I can win the Derby! Afterwards, he finally gave his horse the name Tokino Minoru, which means time to bear fruit. Originally, the Tokino title belonged to the deceased Kan Kikuchi, an author Nagata admired and had previously appointed as the president of his film company. In Kikuchi's honor, Nagata borrowed the Tokino title and reserved it for horses whom he believed were worthy of winning the Japanese Derby. Tokino Minoru did not disappoint because he oppressively won every race he entered that year. It did not matter if he ran on turf or dirt, whether the distance was 1,000 or 1,200 meters, it was all irrelevant. He demolished every opponent. In his first year, Tokino Minoru championed 6 races and set 4 new course records. The closest any racer ever got to him was 2.5 lengths away. In contrast, the largest gap between himself and the next horse was over 10 lengths long. But the craziest part about his victories was his chronic knee pain and hoof cracks never resolved. In fact, those issues only got worse in the new year. The occasional flare-up of knee pain became a constant problem. Tanaka claimed they never had a smooth training session again since the horse turned 3 years old. He suspected there was a hairline fracture somewhere. Despite waiting until April for his next race, Tokino Minoru's condition did not improve. According to jockey Iwashita, even in training, I was just barely managing to ride him, coaxing him along. So when we entered the 4-year-old classics, it wasn't because everything had gone according to plan. It was more like, if we waited any longer, we wouldn't make the classics at all, so we had no choice to push ahead. And no matter how long we waited, he wasn't going to suddenly get better. So once he turned 4, every race felt like a one-shot gamble. I always went in thinking this might be his last. Even though he was not at his best and forced to carry a heavy handicap of 59 kilograms, which was 7 kilograms higher than his last race at the Asahi High, Tokino Minoru executed a magnificent display of strength and easily won 2 1,800-meter races, one at Nakayama and then another at Tokyo. Staring in disbelief, the people whispered, "How strong is this horse?" In the weeks leading up to the first round of the Triple Crown, Tokino Minoru's fame spread beyond horse racing circles. Even people who had no interest in horse racing or betting knew his name and the supremacy of his speed. Fans were no longer questioning whether Tokino Minoru would win his next race. They asked by how much he would win. On May 13th, Tokino Minoru entered the Satsuki show as the overwhelming favorite with a single win support rate of 73.3%, which was the highest in the history of the Satsuki show and remains unmatched to this day. For comparison, Deep Impact holds the second highest rate since 2005 at 63%. As everyone expected, Tokino Minoru won the Satsuki show by 2 lengths and ran so fast that he beat the previous record by 6.1 seconds. After spending 16 years involved with the horse racing world, both jockey Iwashita and owner Nagata earned their first victory in the Satsuki show, as well as Tanaka's third. Unfortunately, the cause for celebration quickly converted into concern. After returning to the stable the next day, Tokino Minoru exhibited an abnormal gait. It would not be until 10 days later that the stable staff discovered there was a crack in his right front hoof. With the Japanese Derby only a few days away, Iwashita did not drive his partner too harshly during their training sessions out of concern for the horse's leg. But Tanaka felt otherwise. After their final training, the typically calm and kind Tanaka scolded Iwashita. "Why aren't you pushing him harder?" It's a good thing Iwashita did not push him harder, because Tokino Minoru's left foreleg swelled up, regardless of the jockey's precautions. The horse had put too much weight on his left leg to compensate for the pain in his right. To make matters worse, he broke out into a fever and completely lost his appetite that evening as well. The stable staff frantically cared for him as best they could, but time was running out. They needed a miracle. One day before the Japanese Derby, the condition of both legs suddenly improved and Tokino Minoru's appetite returned, as if the god of horse racing willed it so. However, the crack in his hoof was still present. According to Iwashita, it got better so completely, it was like a lie. Everyone around suddenly brightened up and the entire stable came alive. Naturally, the media reported on the horse's condition and the team's final verdict about their participation. Admittedly, both owner and trainer felt uneasy and seriously considered withdrawing. But in the end, they chose to run. Nagata announced, "He'll be the favorite. We can't disappoint the fans." To lessen the pain, a felt padding was fitted between Tokino Minoru's hoof and shoe. But despite his resolve to enter the Japanese Derby, a cloud of doubt hung over Nagata like a bad omen. There were just too many ominous coincidences to ignore. In Japanese, ku means suffering, and the number 9 shares the same pronunciation. Keeping that in mind, the Japanese Derby was taking place on June 3rd, which totals to 9. Tokino Minoru's starting gate was number 9, and he was literally suffering in pain days before the race. The worried, superstitious owner muttered, "It seems like the race itself may become a hardship." The next day at Tokyo Racecourse, over 70,000 people came to watch Tokino Minoru run, and for the first time in history, people were allowed to watch from the track's infield because of all the attendees. Even though the public was aware of the horse's recent injury, Tokino Minoru was still the overwhelming favorite with a 50.5% approval rating. Moments before the race, when asked about his performance in the upcoming battle, Iwashita replied, "Up to 2,000 meters, I don't think there's a horse who can match him. But at 2,400 meters, we'll simply do our best." Afterwards, Iwashita mounted his horse and the pair gallantly walked through the paddock full of vigor until they reached their starting position. After the signal, Tokino Minoru stumbled off the brake and ran behind the other horses. Still concerned about his partner's legs, Iwashita held his horse back instead of reclaiming the front, which led to the pair running in 8th or 9th place during the early stages of the race. Tokino Minoru remained in that position through the first corner and straight. He did not move up until going through the second turn. Taking advantage of the small gap to his front, Tokino Minoru squeezed through the blockade and claimed the lead in seconds. While running one lane away from the inner rail, another horse contested his spot on the final turn, but he quickly broke away on the home stretch. Another horse on the far outside desperately tried to catch up to his 3-length lead, but there was not enough distance remaining. Tokino Minoru crossed the finish line with a 1 1/4 length difference and set a new course record of 2 minutes 31.1 seconds, which was 0.3 seconds faster than Kurifuji's time. Immediately after receiving their award, before Iwashita even had time to dismount, a massive wave of fans poured onto the track and surrounded Tokino Minoru. Flooded with bliss from finally achieving his dream derby win, Nagata exclaimed, "If he wins the Triple Crown, I'll send him to America!" Unfortunately, his proclamation never bore fruit, It was a miracle Tokino Minoru's legs healed in time for the derby. A debt was owed, and the god of horse racing came to collect it. Just 5 days after their victory, Tokino Minoru's stable groom reported, "He doesn't seem well. He's lost his appetite." But that was just the beginning. Tokino Minoru's condition worsened with each passing day. It got to the point where simply walking caused him pain. About a week later, on June 16th, he was treated for pink eye because of the redness in his eyes, but it had no effect. The redness became more severe, his third eyelid protruded outwards, and his gait became stiff the next day. They gave him stimulants and fluids, but that also failed. His symptoms intensified later that evening, and veterinarians suspected tetanus, a fatal neurological disease that leads to muscle spasms and paralysis. In response, Nagata and Iwashita drove to the National Institute for Animal Health for an anti-toxin serum, which was administered with penicillin upon their return. The distressed owner implored, "Do whatever it takes! Spare no expense! Use all the derby prize money! I don't care if he never races again! Just save his life!" Despite their best efforts, Tokino Minoru showed no signs of improvement the next day. His entire body became as stiff as a board, which only worsened by the evening. Any exposure to touch, light, and even the sound of cutting grass exacerbated his symptoms, all indications of tetanus. From there, veterinarians blocked out the sunlight coming into his stall, and only medical personnel or stable grooms were allowed near him. There was a moment of respite on the 19th when his symptoms eased and he recovered a slight appetite. It seemed as if he was gradually improving, but just as everyone felt optimistic, those positive emotions were crushed on the afternoon of the 20th. Full body spasms tormented the horse throughout the day and into the evening. By 6:40 p.m., he collapsed in convulsions. He could not swallow, and the medical team were unable to administer sedatives. Later that night, Iwashita, who had been out running errands, hurried back to the stables shouting, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Finding comfort in hearing his partner's voice, Tokino Minoru closed his eyes and passed away at 10:34 p.m. on June 20th, 1951. Tragically, sepsis caused by tetanus claimed his life at the young age of just 3 years old, 17 days after becoming the first undefeated racehorse to claim both the Satsuki Show and the Japanese Derby. The cause of tetanus was never determined, but many people speculate the bacterial infection entered through the crack in his right front hoof. After holding a funeral at the stables, Tokino Minoru's remains were buried in the Horse Memorial Tower at Tokyo Racecourse. His final career record stands at 10 wins out of 10 races, 7 of which he set new course records. In the end, Tokino Minoru truly was perfect. News of his passing shocked the entire nation. It was such a big story that even major national newspapers ran it as a top headline. When asked for comment, Iwashita answered, "I wanted to see him run just once on 4 good legs. He always ran on 3, protecting the bad knee, and still set 7 records. I wonder how fast he would have been on 4. Several of Iwashita's rival jockeys also gave their thoughts on Tokino Minoru. Katsutaro Sakai stated, "His strength was on a completely different level. It wasn't even close. He was simply incredible." Kunichi Asami declared, "He was unbelievably strong. Tokino Minoru was the strongest of them all. I have never seen a horse like him. If he had lived, he would have won 5 classics easily. In Mainichi Shimbun's tribute to Tokino Minoru, author Nobuko Yoshiya wrote, "From his debut, he won 10 straight races. Then, after winning the Derby, he vanished. He was a phantom horse, born to win the Derby." From that moment on, Tokino Minoru was immortalized as the Phantom Horse. There are many phantoms in Japanese horse racing, but no other horse holds the title of being the Phantom Horse. Both jockey Iwashita and owner Nagata were devastated after the loss of their prized star. For 49 days straight, rain or shine, Iwashita visited Tokino Minoru's grave every day. Prior to 1950, Iwashita struggled as a jockey, and it wasn't until he rode Tokino Minoru did he see significant success in his career. He felt so strongly for his companion that he named his firstborn son, who was born in February of 1951, as Minoru. Ironically, the owner who initially forgot all about his horse cherished him more than anything. Like he previously stated, Nagata spared no expense trying to save Tokino Minoru. He spent all the Derby prize money and then some to cover his horse's treatment. With tears running down his face, Nagata mourned. He must have been in pain during the Derby, and yet, for me, for the fans, he ran with everything he had. Poor thing. What a horse. Nagata always wept when speaking about Tokino Minoru, and he never used the Tokino title again. On another note, the tragic tale of Tokino Minoru's loss to tetanus informed the government on the importance of horse vaccination. Prior to his death, Japanese equine medicine focused on treatment rather than prevention, and because it was not contagious, there was no centralized policy for tetanus, even though vaccinations already existed. However, after Tokino Minoru's passing, the public, and more importantly, the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries painfully realized if a horse as famous and well cared for as Tokino Minoru could die of tetanus, then any horse can. His death swiftly forced a policy change, making tetanus vaccinations mandatory for all racehorses going forward. Because of Tokino Minoru, no other racehorse has suffered the same fate. Afterwards, numerous horse racing associations and committees banded together and petitioned for the transfer of horse racing oversight and operations to private management. Previously, the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries regulated the horse racing industry, but every region, racecourse, and stable had their own policies and practices. After several years of political negotiation and legislation, the Japan Racing Association was officially established on September 25, 1954. Masaichi Nagata became one of the JRA's 52 founding members and later became the vice president of the Tokyo Horse Owners Association. Aside from becoming more seriously involved in the horse racing industry, Nagata honored his horse in other ways as well. On July 20th, 1955, he released The Phantom Horse, a film he produced to mourn the death of Tokino Minoru. The Phantom Horse is one of the earliest Japanese horse racing movies and has color footage preserving Tokyo Racecourse and its barrier starting gate line from the 1950s. Fun fact, jockey turned trainer Futoshi Kojima, who rode Sakura Bakshi no, as well as many other prominent Sakura titled Umamusume, and also trained Manhattan Cafe, said watching this film was what inspired him to become a jockey. In that same year, Nagata commissioned a bronze statue of Tokino Minoru. It was completed in 1966 and then installed next to the paddock at Tokyo Racecourse. Tokino Minoru's statue faces in the direction towards Kyoto Racecourse, where the Kikasho takes place, as if to say his soul still longed to run in the last round of the Classic Triple Crown. Although Tokino Minoru's time in the horse racing world was brief, his legacy remains eternal. Not only did he influence the policy change which would prevent future horses from tetanus, he transformed the horse production strategies used by Japanese breeders as well. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, Tokino Minoru was descended from the Tetrak from his dam's side, but also on his sires, which makes him a 3x4 inbreed of the Tetrak, and has a shared blood percentage of 18.75%, also known as the miracle blood percentage. Breeders in Britain have been utilizing the 4x3 inbreeding technique as far back as the early 1800s, but it would not be introduced into the United States and then translated to Japanese until the 1940s. Although unpopular at first, after Tokino Minoru's dominant career, countless breeders produced horses using this inbreeding theory to inherit desirable traits while minimizing harmful effects. Many successful Umamusume are 4x3 inbreeds, such as Tenino Gimlet, Hishi Amazon, and Tosin Jordan, just to name a few. In 1969, the Tokyo Yonsai Stakes, now known as the Kyoto News High, added the subtitle Tokino Minoru Memorial to their race, which was the first time in history a horse had their name used as a race subtitle. Many people believe those who win the Kyoto News High will become Derby champions, guided by Tokino Minoru's spirit. In 2001, Jungle Pocket did exactly that. Fast forward to 1984, the JRA Kenshoba was formed, which was the equivalent of the Hall of Fame for Japanese racehorses. Tokino Minoru, along with 5 other horses, were selected as their first group of honorary horses. In 2004, Tokino Minoru was voted as the #1 horse for the 1950s, as well as the #1 frontrunner between 1950s and 70s. Funnily, many racing analysts did not consider him a frontrunner. He wasn't the type who insisted on leading no matter what. I don't especially think of him as a frontrunner. His absolute speed was so superior, he simply ended up front. Even Iwashita believed he was not good at front running. Compared to horses with good early speed, he was actually slow out of the gate. But by the second stride, he was already flying, and he'd be in front before you knew it. Around the final 3 furlongs, he would start accelerating on his own. I hardly ever had to use the whip. Thanks to the preservation efforts of Nagata, even younger racing fans can learn of the Phantom Horse. Tokino Minoru's story may not be as prominent as it once was, but his statue continues to look over Tokyo Racecourse and its visitors. Since the statue's completion, people use it as a meeting spot during their visits, as if Tokino Minoru himself was welcoming fans into the fascinating world of horse racing, much like a certain secretary greeting Tracing Academy students at its gates. By now, I think most Umamusume players know about Tazuna Hayakawa's poorly kept secret identity being Tokino Minoru. After all, the game developers left plenty of clues for us to dig into. Starting with Tazuna's character design, some of the most obvious clues are she shares the same May 2nd birthday as Tokino Minoru, and her outfit has the same colors and patterns as the jockey's uniform, especially when Tazuna bends her elbows to fix her hat. Furthermore, her name, Tazuna Hayakawa, is extremely suspicious. The word Tazuna means reins, like the reins of a horse. As for Hayakawa, it means swift river in English, but the kanji for Haya by itself originally refers to a swift, excellent horse. A less obvious clue connecting Tazuna to Tokino Minoru is her watch. Toki means time in Japanese. Tazuna wears her watch on her right arm, and if on all fours, that would be the same as a horse's right front leg. Looking back at Tokino Minoru's last race, it was his right front hoof that was injured and suspected for the cause of tetanus. Tazuna wearing the watch on her right arm feels like Tokino Minoru wishing for more time before his injury. Moving on to Tazuna's support card events, we can find even more hidden clues about her Uma identity. During the event that allows us to take Tazuna on dates, she mentions her special attachment to the derby. Considering Tokino Minoru's last race before his passing was a Japanese derby, then it's only natural for the derby to have special meaning to a character based off him. In Tazuna's second date event, she easily catches up to Taiki's shuttle, who was known as the strongest miler in Japanese history. Obviously, no normal human can catch a horse, let alone one as fast as Taiki's shuttle. If there was a horse who could compete on the same level as Taiki, then it would be none other than Tokino Minoru, with 8 of his wins being in sprints and miles. At the end of our third date with Tazuna, while riding the train home, she briefly mentions the feeling of waiting for the starting gates to open and quickly flees the scene after being questioned about it. As the trainer stands in the street alone, the billboard flashes an advertisement about a film featuring the phantom Umamusume who suddenly left the racing world, a direct reference to the movie The Phantom Horse. The last clue connecting Tazuna to Tokino Minoru takes place during the fourth date, where an angered Tazuna confronts the director about the lack of supplies at the infirmary. After being brushed off by the director, Tazuna speaks with a heavy heart about students losing their ability to race due to an accident or injury, and thinking about the despair from never feeling the wind in their face again fills Tazuna with dread, as if she knows from experience. If it wasn't obvious, this corresponds exactly with how Tokino Minoru did not have access to the proper medical vaccinations to treat his illness, which ultimately ended his racing career. Before I forget, big shout out to Serenia the Cyndaquil, Lince Nico, and Katzen Wells for being my YouTube members. I'm super grateful to have your extra support, even though I don't have much to offer. Thank you so much. It's unclear why Tokino Minoru was not directly added to the game, but I consider all these Easter eggs hidden in Tazuna Hayakawa's story as undeniable confirmation. Tazuna? What are you doing here? Me? No, I wasn't recording. I was just. No, you must have heard wrong. I definitely didn't say your name.
あんまりしゃしゃってっと